Okay, let's unpack this. You know that feeling when the internet is just buzzing with chatter? Not the mainstream headlines, but that deeper hum of rumors, strange timelines being discussed, claims circulating in corners you might not normally look.
Yeah, that undercurrent of discussion.
What if some of those discussions touch on things that sound absolutely wild? Things like clones, hidden entities pulling strings, and even ancient prophecies being fulfilled in unexpected ways.
It's a rabbit hole you can easily get lost in, isn't it? Especially when the claims offer a completely different view of reality.
Exactly. And that's what brings us to today's deep dive. You shared some fascinating source material with us, specifically excerpts from YouTube videos from a channel focused on a practice they call investigative hypnosis.
hmm The source describes this as an investigative cycle, often involving an external hypno-operator and even telepathic support. It's presented as a method for accessing information that isn't available through, conventional means.
Right. So our mission today is really twofold. First, we're going to dive deep into the genuinely surprising and, let's be honest, outlandish claims made in the first source regarding Pope Francis and the events supposedly surrounding him.
Some really detailed, specific claims there.
And then we're going to take a crucial turn and explore the second source you provided, which, fascinatingly, comes from the very same context and offers a critical perspective on the reliability of information obtained through this exact hypnosis method.
Yeah, it's quite something. It's not just a journey into some extraordinary claims, but also a look at how information itself is questioned and evaluated, even from within the framework where it originates.
So get ready to sort through some truly mind-bending material and think about how we approach understanding claims like these. Let's dive in.
Let's start with the first source, which details findings from one of these investigative cycles. They describe connecting with Papa Francesco on a specific date and time, April 25th at 10:42 a.m. Very precise.
And the very first striking finding they present. Un clone. He's a clone. Just like that.
Yes, a central claim right off the bat. According to this source, this figure has no subliminal part. It's purely a technological contenator, a container controlled by interruttore switches.
Okay, wait, hold on. So if that person is a clone, what happened to the real Pope Francis according to this source? Is he mentioned?
Oh, yes. The claim is that the real Pope Francis died earlier on February 23rd.
February 23rd. Okay. Cause of death.
The cause of death is given as suffocation, suffocation, or not breathing. And a detail the source adds is that after 3 days, he was cremated.
Wow. That's incredibly specific. Okay, so the real Pope is gone, cremated,
Yeah.
and the clone.
The clone-
Clone's fate is also given a timeline.
Yes, it is. The source predicts the clone's death on Monday, April 21st, 2025.
2025. Okay.
And they state explicitly it's not a natural death. They will staccato interruttore, which translates to pulling the plug or disconnecting the switch.
So, switched off.
Switched off. The source emphasizes this was a planned event, decided beforehand as part of a larger disegno, a plan from piani alti, higher levels. It was tutto già programmato, all already programmed.
Wow. Now, the timing of this predicted clone death near Easter and Pasquetta, Easter Monday, is given a dual meaning in the source material, right? There's more to it.
Exactly. According to the source, there's a hidden, occult, and negative meaning associated with the date. It's described as an ombra nera, a black shadow, signifying the fine di qualcosa, the end of something.
Okay. A negative occult meaning, but publicly.
Publicly, the message presented is spun positively. Because it aligns with the Jubilee year and Easter, the narrative is that dying then makes him more sanctified, portraying him as the Papa Buono, the good pope. So a positive public spin on an alleged negative occult event.
Very convenient, if true. Okay, shifting gears slightly, the source also touches on prophecies, specifically the idea of a last pope leading to Rome's fall. How does it handle that well-known idea?
It dismisses it entirely. It calls this concept not a genuine prophecy, but an egregora.
An egregora. What does that mean in this context?
That term, as used here, means a collective thought form or a shared idea. The source claims it was created and is fueled by fazioni opposte, opposing factions, as a form of struggle against the church. It's not real prophecy, just weaponized thought.
Interesting. And what about the famous Malachi prophecy mentioning Petros Romanus, Peter the Roman, and the destruction of the city on 7 hills, that specific one?
Also dismissed as another form of egregore by this source, and they add that these collective thought forms only gain power, se ricevere energia, if they receive energy, meaning if people focus on them and give them belief or emotional weight, otherwise they're powerless.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a bit wild. The source describes an active, hidden power struggle. Who are the players involved here?
Right. According to this material, the current faction managing the Vatican is identified as Questi Reptilo, these reptiloids.
Reptiloids. Okay.
But there's a rival opposing faction described as Degli Arachnoidi, some arachnoids.
Arachnoids, so spider-like entities. And are either of these groups meant to be, like, the good guys?
Absolutely not. The source explicitly states that neither faction has benevolent intentions. It's a power struggle between two non-benevolent groups.
Wow, okay. And this hidden struggle allegedly impacts post-pope geopolitics. What does the source predict will happen after this clone pope's predicted death?
Molt interference and caos, a lot of interference and chaos. While the Vatican faction supposedly has tutto predisposto, everything predisposed or planned, they are facing significant pressure from this opposing arachnoid faction. Things won't go smoothly.
And when it comes to the next conclave to elect a new pope, what esoteric information does the source claim to perceive about that? Any clues?
Images of a drago, a dragon, and the city of Valencia.
Valencia, Spain. How does Valencia fit in with conclave interference? That seems random.
Well, the source claims someone originating from Valencia will scombinare tutto, mess everything up in the conclave. They trace a specific unusual connection. Sina, China, Valencia, arachnoid.
China to Valencia to the arachnoids. Okay, you have to explain that chain. What does that mean?
The explanation given is that someone from China needs to influence the conclave, but they won't go directly. They will pass through Valencia to find someone else to send in their place. The source states a persona valenciana será sormentite spoglia un cines, which translates roughly as a Valencian person will be a Chinese person in disguise or under their control.
A Manchurian candidate type situation almost. And this person is already in the Vatican.
Yes, according to the source, they hold a very important role, though apparently not a prelate, have been there a long time, and are described as corrotta. Corrupted. And their specific action in the conclave, what do they do?
Among the Foglietti Bianchi, the white voting papers, one specific vote will rimettere acuto in gioco, put everything back in play because it doesn't align with the pre-voting organization or plan. This disrupting vote belongs to the person arriving via this alleged Valencia-China connection. It throws a wrench in the works. So intense interference predicted, designed to disrupt the established plan. What's the outcome of the conclave, according to this source? Who gets elected?
It will apparently take 3 conclaves to elect the next pope, so a difficult process. And his nationality is predicted to be Venezuelan. Okay. Let's circle back briefly to the real Pope Francis mentioned earlier, the one who supposedly died in February. What does the source say about his parte subliminale, his subliminal part or soul, after his physical death? Where is it now?
It is now in a gabbia, a cage.
A cage. Why?
The reason given is nahavistrop. He saw too much. And the source claims he gave consent to this gabbia when he consented to become pope, like it was part of deal somehow.
Saw too much. Okay. And finally, there was a detail about an entity near the real pope at the moment of his death on February 23rd. Can you remind us about that?
Yes, a black-beaked entity described with becco turinero, black beak, and pium, feathers. This entity was allegedly always near him, and he rispondeva a questa entità sempre, always answered to this entity. And this entity's identity, is it connected to the others?
The source connects it to Eroe Rettiloide, who is described as the capo dell'organizzazione che gestisce il Vaticano, the head of the reptiloid organization managing the Vatican. The entity actually near the Pope at death was just a sottoposto, a subordinate of this leader.
Okay, so we've just taken a dive into some truly extraordinary claims from one source involving papal clones, reptiloid and arachnoid entities vying for control, specific details about the real Pope's fate and subliminal state, and intricate plans for disrupting the next conclave via a China-Valencia arachnoid connection. It paints a picture of a hidden reality manipulating major global events. It's a lot.
It's a lot to process, yeah. Offering an alternative narrative that is incredibly complex and filled with specific, often bizarre detail.
Absolutely. And this is where the source material you shared gets even more fascinating, because it contains a significant counterpoint. Another part of this material, coming from the same context of these investigative hypnosis sessions, provides a deep, critical look at the reliability of the information gathered this way.
That's right. And the second source starts with a very strong statement. In realtà non esiste una sessione di ipnosi investigativa. In reality, there is no such thing as an investigative hypnosis session.
Whoa.
Oh?
Okay, so what do they mean? You can't investigate using hypnosis.
They clarified this doesn't mean you can't investigate while someone is in hypnosis, but that one single session should absolutely not be taken as reliable information, not on its own.
Okay, and the reason they give is quite stark. They say the information arriving in hypnosis is molto contaminato, very contaminated.
Yes, the percentage of inquinamento dell'informazione, information pollution, is described as altissima, very high, extremely high.
Very high contamination. Why? What causes it, according to them?
They go into detail about why this contamination occurs. Information, they say, travels through many dimensions and densities, passing through consciousnesses that can distort it, either on purpose or unintentionally.
Okay, so it's like a game of cosmic telephone.
Sort of. And crucially, the person receiving the information in hypnosis interprets it through their own subjective filter, their mind, their consciousness, their life experiences, their education, culture, even past lives. Everything colors it.
They use vivid analogies for this distortion, right, to make the point clear.
They do. Like trying to talk underwater with vocal cords designed for air, or communicating in different languages with different underlying codes where the meaning gets lost or twisted.
Or gestures meaning opposite things.
Exactly. Or even interpreting gestures that mean opposite things in different cultures. These analogies are used to emphasize how the original signal becomes completamente deformata, completely deformed, from its source to how the person in hypnosis receives and describes it.
So if the information is this contaminated, what is the actual use of this hypnosis information, according to this critical source? It's not for gathering factual data then.
Precisely. They state it's not for memorizzare dei dati di prenderli per buoni, memorizing data and taking it as good or true. That's not the goal.
Then what's the point of doing it at all?
It's described instead as a veicolo di movimento di trasporto verso la causa del problema per poi lavorarci. It's a vehicle or tool for moving towards the cause of a client's personal problem so that they can then work on that problem.
So it's therapeutic for the individual client.
Yes. The value, according to this critical perspective, is in identifying where the client's issue lies, the root cause, not in the specific detailed data about, say, world events or other people that comes through during the session. That data is just a byproduct and likely distorted.
Okay, so if a single session isn't reliable for investigation, how is true investigation done, according to this source? If you did want to find reliable info this way.
They are very clear that it is lungo, dificultoso, stancante, long, difficult, and tiring. It requires multiplying the number of sessions significantly, not just one or two.
Many more sessions, and not just more sessions, but with different people involved.
Yeah.
To avoid bias.
Yes, ideally with different operators and different subjects who do not know each other's findings. This is key to minimize cross-contamination and subjective bias coloring the results.
Makes sense. And where does reliability come from in this long, difficult process? How do you spot the true signal?
Reliability, they argue, only comes from information that is uguale a tutte, e in comune a tutte o a quasi, the same or nearly the same across all or almost all sessions. Consistency is key.
Across all sessions, how many are we talking?
And they're talking about thousands of sessions over many years, not a quick process.
Thousands of sessions. Wow. And even after all that filtering, looking for that common thread, what's the reliable percentage they estimate?
It's described as bassissima, very, very low. Maybe più in basso di un 2-3%. Lower than 3%, maybe even 2%.
2 or 3% reliable, that's tiny.
It is. And then they add the striking line, immagine tutto il resto è spazzatura. Imagine all the rest is garbage or junk.
Wow. So 97% or more is considered unreliable or garbage, even within this framework that uses the technique. That's a huge caveat. The source also raises ethical concerns about looking into unconnected individuals, right? Using this for spying on people.
Yes, they mention asking about Tizio, Caio, Sempronio, essentially, random individuals like Tom, Dick, or Harry. They point out that an individual's subliminal part might simply not authorize that information to be shared. There's a consent issue.
And besides consent, entities might mess with the data. That was mentioned earlier, too.
Absolutely. They warn that other entitafurba, cunning entities, might take advantage if someone tries to access information about another person without permission. They could impersonate the target and provide informazioni ovviamente distorte, obviously distorted information, for their own manipulation or amusement.
So it's unreliable, and potentially manipulated. They use a relatable analogy for source reliability too, which helps put this in perspective, comparing it to news sources.
Yes, they compare it to checking a reliable official news site like ANSA in Italy, something with internal controls, fact-checking, and a large public audience that can verify or question the information. Accountability. Versus trusting the primo blog if you passa davanti, magari c'ha 4 followers, the first blog you stumble across that maybe has 4 followers. You have no built-in guarantee of certainty or reliability with that kind of source. It's about source vetting.
That makes sense. And finally, they suggest that even rigorous multi-session investigation is easier and potentially more reliable when focused on smaller topics.
Exactly. When focused on spazi ristretti, restricted spaces, or specific narrow themes, like, for example, investigating pedofilia nella Chiesa Cattolica, a specific issue within a defined context, that's more manageable than very general, huge topics like buccineri, black holes.
Right. Those broad topics, they suggest, need to be broken down into much smaller, manageable details to build a more reliable picture over time and through those thousands of sections. You can't just tell me about black holes in one session.
Precisely. Incremental and focused seems to be the suggestion for any hope of reliability.
So let's connect all of this back to you, the listener, navigating the information landscape today. On one hand, we've explored a source that presents incredibly detailed, complex, and frankly outlandish claims about hidden power structures, entity control, clones, specific geopolitical maneuvers being orchestrated at a hidden level. These claims offer a compelling, even seductive, alternative narrative that seems to explain things in a way the mainstream doesn't.
Yeah, they provide seemingly precise details, dates, locations, entity names, percentages of influence, which can feel like uncovering a secret history or a hidden truth, leading to those aha moments we talked about. It feels like you're getting the real story.
Exactly. But on the other hand, and this is crucial, we've looked at material that originates from the very same context, the world of investigative hypnosis, that performs a massive internal critique of the reliability of the method used to obtain these claims.
Right. It basically undermines its own potential findings from single sessions. It states that a single session is unreliable and that potentially 97% or more of the information gathered across many sessions is garbage, requiring thousands of attempts to find that tiny percentage of what might be reliable commonality.
It's a powerful juxtaposition contained within the sources themselves, isn't it? You have the wild claims presented, but also a strong argument from within the source's own world, questioning the very foundation of those claims if they come from limited investigation.
Absolutely. The source material itself contains both the spectacular claim and the deep skepticism about the method generating it.
So what does this mean for you? Encountering information in the age of overload. You're constantly presented with narratives, some mainstream, some alternative, some genuinely extraordinary, like this stuff. How do you evaluate their validity? How do you weigh different sources, especially when they claim access to hidden or unconventional knowledge?
This deep dive really highlights the fundamental challenge of information evaluation, doesn't it? How do you understand the methodology or the limitations of the methodology, as pointed out here, behind a claim?
Yeah, and how do you discern what might resonate as potentially true or worth exploring further from what might be simply spazzatura garbage, as this source puts it, regardless of how detailed or complex or even appealing it might sound?
It's a critical skill we all need to hone.
We've taken a deep dive into some truly extraordinary claims allegedly unearthed via a specific method of hypnosis, exploring everything from papal clones and reptiloid controllers to intricate conclave interference plans orchestrated by hidden entities. Really wild stuff.
And crucially, we've balanced that by exploring the source material's own extensive commentary on why information gathered this way might be overwhelmingly contaminated and unreliable, suggesting perhaps only 2–3% across thousands of sessions is dependable. A tiny fraction.
So here's the final thought to leave you with. If even within the world of esoteric investigation, as presented by this source, there's such a strong internal recognition that 97% or more of the information gathered might be garbage, what does that tell us about the critical thinking required when evaluating any extraordinary claim we encounter, no matter how detailed or intriguing it might seem?
Especially claims coming from sources where the methodology itself is questioned, even internally.
It raises an important question for all of us. How do you decide what to trust?